We have some new social media censorship taking place, and it keeps getting more and more absurd as time goes by. Facebook censored Think Progress because the Weekly Standard told them to censor us. Wow. So the Weekly Standard is a conservative publication. By the way, they never even did fact-checking before teaming up with Facebook to be fact-checkers, so that shows you how it's bullshit from the beginning. And Facebook even admitted, the reason why we allowed the Weekly Standard to be a fact-checker is because we wanted to appease all sides. So in other words, that's them saying, we're not claiming to be objective. What we're doing is we're trying to be neutral. Well, if you're neutral, then your fact checks are bogus because valuing neutrality is a bias. That's a bias there. I'm biased towards calling it 50-50 as much as possible. Well, then you're not objective. Objective means I'm going to tell the truth no matter what. And sometimes the truth is not at all neutral. But what you're saying is, no, we're going to prioritize neutrality over objectivity to appease both sides. Well, then you're not fact-checking. That's not fact-checking. That's doing propaganda. That's what that is. So they never did fact-checking. Then they decided, okay, let's do a bunch of fact checks real quick. They did like 10 fact checks, and then they applied. And Facebook was like, okay, fine, here, you can be fact checkers too. And then now, when you give a conservative organization, a biased conservative organization, the ability to fact check, and some of the people who are fact checking are left-wing sites, look at what happens. So for those of you who don't know, the Weekly Standard, they labeled the Iraq War, quote, a war to be proud of. These are fact checkers now. These are fact checkers. The Iraq War is a good thing. That's a fact. We're objective. That's not objective. That's not a fact. It's unbelievable how broken this system is. It ran an article in 2017 saying, quote, look under the hood on climate change science and what you see isn't pretty. They're climate science deniers and they're fact checkers. We now live in a dystopian nightmare that I've been warning you about from the beginning. So what they did is they ranked a piece from Think Progress on Brett Kavanaugh false. And the piece on Brett Kavanaugh said, hey, look, on Roe versus Wade, he's going to vote to strike it down. And they basically said, well, he hasn't done that yet, so therefore your fact check is false. Now, the piece from Think Progress is very detailed because it says, well, look at what he said on this abortion-related case, and look at what he said on this abortion-related case, and that's very clear that he's against abortion, and now look at what these judicial experts are saying about what Kavanaugh really means when he said those things, and he's very likely to vote, basically against Roe versus Wade, just against abortion. He's very likely to vote against choice on the court. And Weekly Standard steps in and goes, no, false. And then now, when that article is shared, there's a big thing that says article rated false from Facebook. So now, that whole concept of like, we're going to have like a kind of a last line of defense that lets people know how fact checkers ruled, I don't actually necessarily disagree with that because they're not banning these articles from being placed on Facebook. They're saying, here's a rating on that. But it is true, the question remains, who's going to watch the Watchmen? Because especially now what they're doing is the people they're choosing to be fact checkers, these aren't good fact checkers. They're doing it to try to be neutral, and when you try to be neutral, you're what you're doing is you're biasing it. It's a bias. That's a bias. It's not objective anymore. If there were actually objective fact checkers, I would be fine with having, like a little thing that says questionable content or whatever. If there's an InfoWars article on Sandy Hook, I'm not against that because they're not taking all of that shit off of the website, which I would 100% oppose. But what they're doing is they're just giving you like, a little stamp of, take this one with a grain of salt. So in principle, I don't mind this as much as I mind the pulling people down completely and giving them the internet death penalty. But it's the way that Facebook is going about it that I go, well, then now we know this is going to be a clusterfuck. And the worst part of it is this, and this I do not agree with. When something is rated false, it loses 80% of its traffic. Well, then that is kind of effectively censoring. Because when you lose 80% of your traffic, I mean, that's huge. So it's deranked, it's deprioritized, and I don't agree with that. I would say, even if something is rated false and it's actually false, like let's say a Sandy Hook conspiracy article or something, I still wouldn't even be okay with deranking that 80% and taking away 80% of that traffic. Because I think that, if enough people read that, most of them are going to go, oh, this seems like bullshit. So I don't... To have fact checkers, again, I don't see as inherently a problem, but you have to have fact checkers who are good fact checkers. And so the implementation of this really matters. And what happened is they didn't do that. So honestly, what I would rather have is no fact checkers. If you're going to go down this road and have a neutrality bias, which makes it not at all objective, then I would rather have no fact checkers at all. Because what you're going to do is you're going to rank a lot of things false that are not even false. So this is social media censorship, particularly because 80% of the traffic is now gone from this article, and that's devastating, and that's not okay. So these social media outlets are an absolute mess, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We've now opened the door, and people have been begging Silicon Valley oligarchs to filter content for them, and now they're doing it. And now what everybody's quickly realizing is, when you allow them to do that, you immediately wish for the good old days back, because it was honestly preferable when it was the wild, wild west and anything went. That was preferable to this. So it's only going to get worse and worse, and I'm warning everybody now, because we never should have bought into the principle. The principle is Silicon Valley CEO oligarchs, you get to pick for us, and that's a given. No, that shouldn't have been a given. We should have been calling for regulating these platforms as public utilities from day one. Basically, it's like a net neutrality for social media platforms. That's what we should have been begging for. Because at least then, we would have very clear, defined rules. We would know that we lean heavily on the side of free speech. And we would know that you're not at the whims of billionaires who do not share your political sensibilities.